When we hear the term police reform, our minds usually jump to a crisis, right? A big headline, a protest, maybe a court order. But what if the most powerful, most lasting change doesn't come from the outside in, but from the inside out? Today, we're talking about how police chiefs can be more than just managers. They can be architects, literally designing proactive, voluntary change from the ground up. Let's take a look at the blueprint.
So right off the bat, you've got two very different paths. Over on one side, you have crisis-driven reform. It's all reactive, it's mandated by a court, and honestly, it often just feels like a temporary Band-Aid. And because it's forced on people, officer buy-in is, well, it's pretty low. But then, look at the other side. Voluntary change. It's proactive, it's initiated by the leadership, and it's all about building a real, sustainable culture. But here's the absolute game changer, that last line, high officer buy-in. When people feel like they're part of building the solution, the change actually sticks.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dive deeper into this tale of two reforms. Then, we'll look at this idea of the chief as an architect. After that, we'll get into the actual blueprint for building trust, and we'll wrap up with 5 concrete steps to make it all a reality. So let's really unpack that first point. The difference between these two approaches, it's not just about timing, it's about mindset. It's about who owns the change and what's motivating them to do it in the first place.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? See, a court order can force you to check a box, but it can't change a culture. Real, voluntary change, the kind that's driven by a leader's vision, that's about reshaping hearts and minds. It's about making new, better behaviors the default, not the exception you're forced into.
And this is what leads us to our big idea for today, the police chief as an architect. We have to stop thinking of them as just crisis managers and start seeing them as designers, as builders of a fundamentally better kind of organization.
So what does being an architect actually mean? Well, it means the chief's job is so much bigger than just managing the day-to-day. They have to be the chief visionary. They're the one who has to paint a clear picture of what the agency could and should be. And, maybe most importantly, they have to inspire everyone down the line to want to pick up a hammer and help build it. Without that shared vision, the best plans in the world are just, well, they're just paper.
Okay, so if the chief is the architect, what's in their toolkit? What's in the actual blueprint? It really comes down to 3 foundational pillars: legitimacy, procedural justice, and a really modern way of thinking about risk.
First up, legitimacy. And honestly, the best way to think about this is like a bank account for trust. Every fair, respectful, and transparent action is a deposit. Every time people feel wronged or unheard, it's a withdrawal. But here's the part that often gets missed. This isn't just about the public. Your own officers need to believe in the legitimacy of their department and their leadership. Without that, morale and performance just plummet. So, how do you make those deposits into the trust account? You do it with procedural justice. This is basically fairness in action. It means giving people a voice, being transparent about how you make decisions, and treating everyone with dignity. It's that old saying, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it. That's what proves your department is worthy of trust.
And this is a huge shift in modern policing. For decades, building trust was seen as a side project, something you handed off to the community relations unit. Not anymore. Now, it's understood to be the central, non-negotiable job of the chief. It has to shape every single policy, every training session, and every decision a supervisor makes.
A great architect doesn't just build a beautiful house. They think about earthquakes and floods. They anticipate problems. That's exactly what proactive risk management is. Instead of just reacting to lawsuits or scandals, you build systems that get ahead of them. You look at the 4 key areas: operational, legal, reputational, and personnel, and you create an environment where doing the right thing is also the easiest thing to do.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy, we've got the blueprint. Now for the fun part. Let's get practical. How do you actually start building this thing? What are the steps?
And that's the million-dollar question for any leader who wants to make a real difference, isn't it? How do you take these big, powerful ideas and turn them into real change that you can see on the streets and feel inside the station?
Well, it breaks down into 5 really connected steps. It all starts with the vision. You have to make legitimacy and procedural justice your North Star. Then you have to communicate that vision over and over, making sure every single officer understands the why behind it all. Next, you have to back up your words with action. Your policy and training have to actually reflect this new vision. From there, you build real accountability, systems that reward the behavior you want and correct the behavior you don't. And finally, you have to constantly evaluate and adapt, because what gets measured is what gets managed.
And we have to be really honest here. This is not a weekend renovation project. You're not just putting on a new coat of paint. This is a long-term construction project. You're building a new foundation and a new culture, and that takes years of patient, steady, and sometimes frustrating work.
And of course, there are going to be challenges. That's a guarantee. You'll face resistance from some officers, you'll get pushback from unions, you'll feel pressure from politicians. But here's the thing. These obstacles are totally predictable. So you can have a strategy ready. You communicate how this new way actually makes officers safer. You involve everyone early on, and you use hard data to show that it's working and reducing risk for the whole community.
So when you step back and look at this entire blueprint, it really redefines the whole purpose of police leadership in the 21st century. Being a great leader, a true architect of reform, isn't about getting really good at managing crises. It's about building an organization with a culture so strong, so rooted in legitimacy and trust that it stops creating those crises in the first place.
Which leaves us all with one final question to think about. Is the ultimate goal of policing to enforce rules or to build trust? This entire approach suggests that maybe that's a false choice. In fact, it argues that building trust is the single most effective way to ensure the rules are respected by everyone.